Okay, so yeah, I haven't really had much of a formal note taking and agenda put together this very well, but I mentioned last week we talked a little about GitHub issues and projects, and in general, the main point of this call is going to be, reviewing what's new in the past week and discuss things people are working on, have open time, and which is important. So open discussion. And yeah, and so we'll definitely try to keep it a lot more interactive this time. Um, so let me just briefly, let's talk about what's new real quick. And let me pull up a different window. So I've got my admin window. It looks like I've got some pull requests in here to approve. So this is kind of a cool one. Riaz yesterday added a lab for Spark operator. So that'll be cool. He's always adding fun labs. I don't know if you're on, Riaz, but thank you for that. So there's you can look and see where's the folder for this. It's this PKS app Spark operator under lab guides. So definitely check that out. I need to approve this. So confirm. Okay. And got some other pull requests here. So these are mostly validation stamps. But yeah, we've actually picked up quite a bit. So I created these forms for the registration. Let's see how they're doing right now. So send them out, Wednesday, like at 2 in the morning or something. So pretty much yesterday morning. So you have 23 people who've registered now for the competition, and people are starting to register points. So that's good. And starting to see a lot of activity pick up. And back into Edge. And let's look at the activity on commits here. See what stands out. So one thing I'll point out too is I'm going to look through some of the recent commits to kind of highlight things that are new here on the site or have been recently updated. You may notice that GitHub doesn't always report statistics on different branches. So if you go into your settings and you start, actually not settings, insights. If you can go into insights and you start looking, what have people done? Well, this only shows master. Right? I don't know of an option here to get to show PKS 1.4. So if you think, hey, I'm committing things and I see some things here, but I don't see everything. It says PC. Well, maybe it is showing PKS 1.4. I don't know. It definitely doesn't show everything. So I have a different, I usually use Repo Explorer, but there's a few different statistics solutions out there that do a little bit better, more robust reporting. So I'm working on getting some additional reporting solutions set up, and I got to get a Docker file for that, but it's a pretty straightforward thing to do. But I just want, if anyone doesn't see all the statistics there, it's something I know about. I think it's something about when you have different branches, not all the statistics get reported. So let's look at what's been happening on master here. So let me see what stands out. So we have this Spark operator, and most of these are just maintenance items. Let's see. You can see there's not as much happening on master as there's on 1.4 because we're most of the activity is going to be over here. So we have a lot of validation stamps and small updates. I think in terms of new courses, I don't think, like, aside from that new lab guide that Riaz added for Spark Operator, I don't think there's been like any net new lab guides, but we have seen one of the ones that there's been a lot of work on. Is actually several people have been going through, in addition to myself, is the PKS the Hard Way course for 1.4. So the big
So
thing that
I'd also added Valero 1.1 on what we had. So that was one update that I'd done.
Ooh, sorry, what was that?
This is Riaz. So I'd updated Valero as well.
You updated. That's right. You did the 1.1 update for Valero. So
yeah,
let's go back into lab guides here, and we'll just review those. So Valero, make sure I'm in 1.4. Okay. So definitely check out. So you said you've updated this for 1.1 of Valero release.
Yes, if you go right down,
Let's see.
should, oh no. So is it in master
Or
or?
maybe it's in master. Let's see.
Yeah,
That's
it's
one of
in
the it's
master.
one of the rough things about these long running branches. But so it is a good point. Keep in mind if you have something that you want to go in the master and in PKS 1.4, that's little, it's two pull releases, but there's not really an easy way around that. Um, oh, cool.
Yeah.
So now we've got this 1.1 backup and restore guide here, in addition to 1.0. Very nice. Cool. And let's see if there is yeah, there isn't a, but we'll get that patched up. And so there's a now the main thing, so we've got the Valero, and now we've got the Spark operator. And so we're really making progress on that. These validation stamps are really important as well. The big, probably the most important thing about the competition and the sprint out of everything right now is, and we have these installation guides. So right now the hard way is the only installation path we've validated. The easy way, I haven't played with the concourse pipelines in a while. I'm not great at concourse, but I mean I'm happy to play with it, and I do want to get those running. I've just been busy, and this is not like the top of my priority chart is getting the easy way working. But PKS the hard way is fully working right now. Um, and so all these lab guides, you can just load up existing templates that you have available access to, and these have all been fully validated, and so you shouldn't have any problems if you're if that's the experience you want. You don't want to have any bugs or problems as you go through anything. The most stable way to go through materials on the site is go to master, load a version 11 template. That's kind of the intent, is so we have more stable materials. The N-1 version is typically going to be more stable, and so if you want the smoothest possible experience, use master, use version 11. But what happens in with the lab guides is that aside from the installation guide, which usually has which sometimes may have more changes, sometimes may not. Say the 1.4 installation guide may not be very much different than the 1.5 installation guide, and that's even usually more true of the feature guide. So if we go into our lab guides here, we got some of these are not populated, so I need to do some cleaning. But for the most part, these are mostly populated, and most of these, just pick one randomly: storage and networking and security. The likely scenario is between, say, 1.3 and 1.4. Turning on feature labs. These are mostly like deploying apps in Kubernetes and things like that. These are probably going to be exactly the same. And so that's one of the biggest things we do with the intent of trying to keep the materials up, and with the competitions, it's having people come in and sign a validation stamp to say, hey, I did this and it still works, or I did this and it still works, but there were a couple minor issues, or there was a major issue. And that way, if people come and just have fun, try out a lab, hopefully it's, in most cases, it's not going to be, if you find a problem with some lab, if you're trying this. Because right now I'm looking at the 1.4 branch, but I'm pretty sure, let's see, no one's probably validated this for 1.4. So the last time anyone went through this guide was in 1.3. But again, start to look at some of the steps here. PKS login, that's exactly the same. kubectl apply, that's exactly the same. I can already tell you right now, there's nothing in here that's going to be any different for 1.4. So when someone comes through, if someone validates this at some point, or most of these lab guides, it's usually you come through, you go through the lab. There's most cases there's going to be nothing wrong, and you sign your validation stamp. And one of the things I still need to do is we want to take, in terms of futures, want to take these validation stamps and get a crawler to come in here, read the validation stamps, and then present me back automatically a list of what has been signed for the new version of a template. And we can see which classes have been validated with which lab guides, but that's still work in progress. So let's see. In terms of what's new, I think that's about it there on the site. But we saw that there's some forums, there's some activity with the competition. I'll also mention here the YouTube channel. So there's this PKS-Ninja-Labs YouTube channel, and this is uh, something I guess any of us can post videos to. The intent of this is really, I mean, not to create a whole new video property for VMware to do general videos. Um, this is really about videos that are very specifically aligned with the lab guides or the lab template. You know, we definitely still use, Cloud Native Apps video channel for if you're going to do a nice video that explains some generic concept. But as you can see, these videos here, I don't know if you've had a chance to watch any of them, but they're not there's no, I didn't put in the intro, I didn't put any outro, I didn't put any fancy editing. Some of them I didn't even really, prepare to make sure it was like super, super smooth, because that's not the point of these. The point is that this is an engineering to engineering type of effort. This is straight talk. It's technically, it's something that helps people feel comfortable a little bit. If this is new to them, they haven't done it yet, they want to feel like I only have so much time to invest in this. I'm going to feel like I'm not going to get lost. I'm not going to get confused. I'm going to be able to make it through. And so hopefully video overviews may help. But something anyone can do. And I actually created some, like, I think it's PKS-Ninja-Labs. It might be this at Gmail too, to be a generic account. So I don't have to, I could eventually, set up to reshare the passwords or what have you. You can set up processes to where other people from the community can upload directly. But in the meantime, if anyone wants to record a video for any session, definitely send me the bits, and I can have it uploaded here as well. And mostly these are things that align closely to lab guides, or are directly kind of reading through lab guides and going through them, or other closely related things to what we're doing on the repo. Okay, and so we've had a lot of growth in our Google group. So hopefully everybody's signed up. I think for a long time I had a bad link, so that probably prevented some growth of this. But I finally fixed the link I was sending for people to register, and I think a couple days ago we were at 60 something members. Now the group is up to 95 here on Google Group. And so we'll do some more open discussion at the end. But before I get into looking at the issues and projects, let me pause there and ask, does anybody have any what's new stuff to bring up? Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into projects. So in terms of managing how we manage the templates, we recently are trying to move to new template versions, and the templates, getting the lab templates to align with the lab materials is a pretty arduous process. OneCloud is it's not bad, right, in a lot of ways. I think the problem with OneCloud that we have with these type of templates is that we're really pushing beyond the limits of what OneCloud was really intended with the size of and I don't even know if it's just OneCloud, it's also our configuration too. Because I think, if you get into these lab templates, a lab template is like a single kind of OVF file, and it's a nested environment, and vCloud Director schedules several of these templates to run on one single server, right? And usually we wouldn't do a proof of concept. We wouldn't ever say, hey, you can install everything on one server. And well, these environments, they actually run on less than one server. Your entire lab template will be sharing a physical server with, I don't know how much of a subscription they have on the back end of the lab templates. And so it's just always a challenge to get the material, get everything in, get it fit. We're trying to make everything the smallest possible size. And we've been going through very manual processes for how we develop them. And I think it's a VApp template in OneCloud here is, it's not a lot different from what we ask our customers to do, right? We're saying, hey, when you deploy applications, deploy them with, use templates. Create a gold standard template, and that'll be that. And then you can have a template brace. You start moving more towards this cattle pet and cattle approach. But how do you build your templates? And I think in the legacy, you still always find that there's always going to be, you need to talk to so and so about this or that, because you start working on something. You've got something complex, and it's complex, so you can't break it down and assign it to 9 different people. So you got to assign it to one person, and then one person starts working on getting this template or this project complete. And maybe they try to start documenting. They're keeping notes somewhere. How exactly are they keeping documentation? It's it could vary. And then you're working on your project. You're getting your template built, and maybe at first you're keeping your notes real well, but then something doesn't work, and you got deadlines. Sorry, I'm trying to get the Confluence page up here, but it's taking its time. You have deadlines, and the next thing you know, you're fixing things in your gold standard template that you didn't document, and because maybe you've got to call so and so, the developer, so and so in engineering, and they're going to log into your template, and maybe they're going to make a change, and you didn't even know, exactly what it was that they changed. And stuff like that happens all the time. And I think as IT, when you're trying to manage legacy processes, you're trying to move towards agile. We didn't really have any documentation around how the V11 template was built. I inherited the V11 template. We had several people working on it, and it's been an awesome template, right? It's held the fort, and it's still the most stable template that we have. But it doesn't. Eventually you've got, just like our customers face, right? You've got to build new versions, and you've got to get things up to date, and so on at some point. And so finding ways to manage that, and to transition that process, and ideally to get you towards new things. Infrastructure as code. So we started out with nothing, and then I started to put some rough notes together. So on Confluence, if you really want to get down into the beginnings of Confluence is just being really slow this morning. The beginnings of what's in the version 12 templates. We started with this kind of more rough documentation here in Confluence, and so you can see there's some one cloud configuration template details. This is in the Cloud Native Apps Confluence space, and there's various different things. How do I transfer templates between orgs? What bugs, and just kind of a rough note-taking approach. And it's if you read through these and you start to go through the history, you can piece things together. And I guess there's some advantages to doing it in different sorts of ways. But we really, as I was working on this, one of the big things that came up is how would we break this apart to where multiple people could potentially work on these things. And it was kind of a really hard problem, because I'm sitting here, I'm not even exactly sure what needs to be in the next version. We needed to have centralized bug tracking, centralized feature requests. And so that's led into some GitHub projects. I've been meaning to do GitHub project stuff and get the site a little more organized. Here we go. And so now we're using issues and projects to manage how we identify things that are wrong with the template, and how we're going to organize them into new builds and new releases. And there's kind of an organized process around that. And so first we'll start at the beginning, which is issues. So you can see, I don't know if you came in here a couple months ago, you wouldn't have seen all these labels. And one thing I want to mention here is if you do see labels here, labels are kind of the best. One of the nice things about continuously innovating and changing all the time is that you can grow and you can evolve all the time. So we've got, I think, some reasonable labeling scheme in place now. That's pretty cool. But nothing's written in stone, so we're always trying to improve everything. But if you come into issues, one thing you'll find is that you can't apply labels yourself. And any of you actually can. A good point is, if anybody wants to get the status I have to add you to membership, and then once I add you, there's a role that GitHub has now that can allow people to add labels and deal with issues. And so I'm actually really happy, because I would have had that in place already. But GitHub didn't have a role for it. It was kind of like, if I added you to the group, you had to have read only or ability to do everything. And now GitHub I think the past couple of weeks introduce some new roles. So where there's a new role called triage that allows people to become members and have rights to issue tickets without actually needing to assign full admin rights. So if anybody wants to get that triage status, you could either apply labels to your own issues, or you could help triage and label other people's issues. In a future competition, I want to make that kind of a point of the competition is getting people to help go through these issues and apply labels to triage them. So in any case, yeah, we got these labels, and we have issues, and if you want to make issues, you can make issues for anything. You can use any format. I really want to be very open about how we accept issues. There's a lot of people who are new to Git and GitHub, and so we always try to ask for maintenance things, like try to look through here, not open an issue on something that has already been opened. But at the same time, I know this is new to a lot of people, so I don't want to be a hard ass about hey, you didn't do it in this exact format or what have you. So if you find any issue and you want to report any information, I'm grateful for that. And so you can open an issue ticket however you want to. But some nice things are, you can see here with a label, if I'm using the cluster ready 0.4 template, I can click here on that label just right there. And boom, I see everything that has that applied to cluster ready 0.4. And it's just really nice if you're going through a lab guide, you realize, hey, there's something wrong. I think there might be an issue with my template. I wonder if somebody else has had that issue. We do have these labels around around templates. Now, I didn't create labels for lab guides themselves. There's just a lot of lab guides, and so I ask if anyone creates an issue about a lab guide, include that lab guide number in the body of the text or in the header of the text somewhere. That way, if you want to search for a particular lab guide, there's the number of the lab guide. So let me just duplicate this tab. And so every course and every lab guide, has this number here. This is a course, so it's CL7056. So include that number if you do open an issue. And if we do that with consistency, then that way, if I know I'm going through this particular course or that particular lab guide, we go to the issues tab. We can do a simple search for that number, and that'll be a way that we could easily find. Has somebody reported an issue with the course or lab guide? If you find an issue, it's a good thing to be able to check on. So simple things that we can do to help. And yeah, so let me go back into issues. So you can go on the labels tab here as well, and you can see all the different labels that we have. Some of these probably, like I said, we could probably use a little improvement on these, but it's a good start here. And you can pick the template that you have, a future template, and then we've got things that patches ready, or if there's a workaround, the workaround label may be on there as well. Generally, when we're talking about anything that will impact a template, a template level change, it's either going to be a bug of some sort or a new feature or enhancement. And so usually for any type of thing that's identified as a bug or a patch, one of those labels will be applied, as well as the template that it applies to. And so now these templates are pretty organized, right? Looks cool, but now that doesn't really help us understand, how does that apply to like project managing the next release, right? And so if we go and click on one of these templates here, this one actually, I picked one that didn't have a milestone. So whenever we have actually that one I just had would be a perfect one. So this one here, it says multiple V12 templates would benefit from storage reoptimization. And actually, let me open this in my admin window, because that one I do not have admin privileges on that account. I have 2 accounts here, so where'd the storage? Oh, yeah, storage optimization. And this is a real simple one. This one doesn't actually affect anybody's user experience. This is more for the back end. They like us to come in and clean the storage periodically to try to keep the template as slim as possible. But I have this here, and now how would I organize this into? Let's say I'm planning the next release, and I want to include this particular issue in the next release that I'm including, or maybe I want to go ahead and write the instructions about how to do this, or maybe I have a script or something like that that can do that, and I want to prepare a patch for it. So let's go ahead and prepare this this issue for how we do that. And so there's a couple key things we use in GitHub projects down here: project boards and milestones. And so I'm going to go now in this one. We can see this applies to baseline, cluster ready, NSXT ready, PKS-D installed, and it's a new feature. It's not a bug, and so I didn't say this applies to any particular version because ultimately this is really here about planning. So this is something that we want to potentially do to all of our templates, but we're not going to say this is a bug that impacts certain releases. And so the project planning boards, I have project planning boards for each of the main templates that we track, and I use those to plan what's going to go into what release. And so once this is here, I can grab projects and I can throw it on the project planning boards for each of the templates. We'll look at what that does in a second. And now the milestone, we'll look at milestone in a minute. A milestone is once I've defined that this issue ticket is going to be included in a particular sprint for a particular release, that's why we use the milestones. Milestone will tie together, once we plan for a sprint, that's going to tie together our different issues that come together for a release. So now I can jump over to the projects board, and so I just added that. And there's a few different projects boards. I have one for this milestone that we're finishing now for this last release of templates. We've got the template transfer, because once a new release is available, it's going to spend anywhere between 2 and 15 days getting transferred, and that's just how it is. It's a royal pain. And then we have something that tracks the build process. But then we have ones that say the templates, and the ones that say the name of the templates, these are where I plan the releases, the next release. And so if we come in here, let's start with baseline. You can see there's a Kanban board, and we have this column on the left, new, not yet triaged. And we can see that one I just added to this board. It shows up in the new, not yet triaged. Because when I added it to this project, I have this column set up. There's an automation here to where this is when a new issue, when someone goes in and they create an issue and then they click on that projects tab and they add this project board to the issue, it'll get added to this project board. It'll pop up here. And this is pretty standard Kanban process here. When we have some issue, there isn't really, I don't have a lot of formality around triaging yet. Backlog doesn't have to have, backlog is when we put something into backlog, it really just means that somebody's reviewed it. We know it exists. Where something's new, it may not even really be on anybody's radar. But backlog doesn't have any particular meaning. But you could try to organize. I mean, maybe at some point it'll be good to have some organizational schemes, some sort of a prioritization in backlog. But ultimately, is once I've reviewed something, I know it's in mind that I can move it into the backlog. I'll leave that in new right now because that one I don't know when I'm going to do that. I'll just leave it over there. And then once I put things in the backlog or even from new, one thing it does say about this backlog, must have labels applied. So sometimes you might see a new issue pop up here and I said there's no labels on it, or maybe it's clearly lacking labels. So usually one of the things that we do if you're looking at it, a new thing here, before you move it to backlog, you'll check it to make sure that the labels you want on it are applied. Sometimes you'll change that with time, but it's at least the first effort. Once it's in backlog, here's things we can start to plan to put in a particular release. And so once I go to next, this is usually where I'm going to be planning some particular sprint to build a set of templates. Now with VApp templates, what we find is that each one has to be managed independently because each one can have and is often impacted by separate bugs that don't impact each other. But most of the time, most bugs impact most of the templates. And so that kind of impacted how we ended up setting this up with milestones to pull everything together. And so once I plan a particular series of builds, because I'll try to plan them where I'm doing several together. I'll create a milestone, and then we can attach those milestones. Once we've move it over to here, we also want it to be attached to a milestone, and that means if it's in next, you've planned it for a particular sprint, for a particular build release. And then the next column over is once you have them in next, you've got your next sprint planned, you've got all the issues that you want in the next sprint ready. And as you start to do those tasks, you can either someone who's assigning tasks or the user themselves who voluntarily wants to come and take in a task, move it over to in progress. And at that point, you'll assign it to user. And then we have this column over here ready for build. And so that's once you've created the patch. And so there's some interesting things about the process here that we've broken down. For this in progress doesn't mean that I've fixed the template, right? Because when you think about breaking down a build, how do we build these? How do we build a VApp template? We go into OneCloud, right? And once we're in OneCloud, we have to load up a template, and only one person can really be building a template at one time, right? Because if I have where's my org? OneCloud. I don't know if everybody sees. I got a bunch of OneCloud orgs. So I'm going to go into this one. If everybody has interfaced with OneCloud before, but this is what it looks like. And you load up your template, and at the end of the day, once you log in, it's pretty much the same for everybody. Some things you have to do by going into your control center, your CLI VM, and you're making changes. But when you make changes, you're making changes to one template, and it's really hard to say, how do multiple people work together or for changes for one template. And so where did that project board go? That's right, I was in Edge. So how exactly do we do this? So for that, realize, if we start to break down, a release based as a series of bug patches or feature updates, then one person can come through and work on each bug patch or feature update, and that can be one process. And then there can be a separate process where someone then takes all of that thing and cumulatively goes into to build it together. And so really what this is saying is that the patch is ready, but it's not saying that I have actually built that. And so so I kind of abstracted that process. At first, we're going to figure out, what exactly are the issues that we're going to patch in a particular release. And then we can organize those, and then several different people could potentially go through and come up with information about how to fix that problem independently. And then once all that is done, we're in a ready to build phase. And generally, once we get to the build, this is still something that's going to have to be done kind of by one person, right? Because once you have one particular, but we do have several different templates, and so this is still something we could kind of break down in a sense, because someone's going to have to load, let's say if you build an SXT ready 0.4, assuming that the build process is to take 0.3 and then make some changes to it. Someone could be working on each of these independently as well, to really help streamline our processes here. But then this board here, this builds board is, again, once all the patches that are planned for a particular sprint are ready, or for a particular template, then somebody can load up that template and start applying those and testing them and moving them to locally validated. And so there is also this kind of macro board for an entire sprint. So once you have a sprint planned, I created this milestone level board. And this kind of lets us track everything that's going on with the template development. And so we can see once a patch is ready, you can move these into the patch ready column here. And then once the builds are completed, you can move them from in progress into the builds completed. And what exactly makes builds complete? Because right now I've actually I have completed these builds, but if you notice, the milestone is not closed. And so for our process, I don't want to leave a sprint as open forever while we're waiting for any possible transfer to any possible number of OneCloud orgs that we might have to transfer this to. So I decided, the primary focus for the biggest one cloud org that can get to most people, it's kind of, I think, if I had to pick one that was more important than any other, I would say it's this Field Enablement Labs, VLP, and Quick Demo. It's all the same catalog I have to transfer them to, and once it gets there, then everyone on Field Enablement Labs, everyone for VLP, everyone from Quick Demo can all get access to it. And so I do have that other template transfer tracking board to transfer track other templates, but as far as the official process is when we're going to consider this milestone complete. We'll consider this milestone complete once these are up on Field Enablement Labs, VLP, and Quick Demo. And so that's in progress. It's a painful process. I put in here, if you go into the issue for full issue ticket, each of these issue tickets, once we have a transfer template ticket, should have the service desk ticket number. And so unfortunately, if you're outside of VMware, you can't see the exact state. If you're inside of VMware, you can open these up and see what the help desk is doing. So your guess is as good as mine. They're working on it. And we are really putting a lot of stress on the system. So I want to be grateful to the help desk. But yeah, the transfer transfer of templates is unfortunately a delayed process. But then the cool part is that if you can't get the new template yet, this process also does really make it a little bit easier to find patches. So you may have noticed there's kind of something missing here that we didn't discuss yet, which I'll discuss now. Let's say you're in here in the template and you've identified things that that you're planning a release, and you say, or maybe you're not even planning a release. Maybe there's an issue and you want to fix an issue, even if it's not planned in a release. So if you're planning on an issue, and as we said earlier, somebody could be fixing this issue, and the person who fixes that issue is not going to be the same person who necessarily builds the issue into a particular template. So where exactly do we put information about this patch? And so that leads into the next subject. And we can actually find that right here by clicking on the issue ticket. Let's go ahead and open the issue ticket. And a standard part of the process here, some of this needs to be documented, is if you're working on an issue ticket, there's a particular place where you can save your patches, save your updates in a particular format. And so that way you have a spot to put the information. It could be a script, it could be a set of instructions, whatever it is that resolves this particular issue. How can you document that, and where should it be when you say the patch is ready? And so there's a particular format here. And so we actually created a separate repo here on CNA Tech called PKS-Ninja-Labs templates. And you can see there's a README here that explains exactly how to address this patch. And so let's look at how this is organized real quick. So if we come to the PKS-Ninja-Labs templates repo here, there is some instructions on the build process. So you can see like where exactly I should save what milestone numbers, template, postfix, template. It explains a lot of things I'm talking about here. I don't know if everything's perfect there, but definitely we'll work together to make sure that this is a well-documented thing and everybody understands what I'm saying there. And so the format of of this repo is basically, you can see this is a version 12 template, and things are organized by milestone. And in this case, we have milestone 6425. And there is actually, I need to initialize another directory because there is actually, and I think in the base of milestone, I created a subdirectory there that says something like no milestone, or maybe in the burst of v12, but it's not showing it here because I didn't put a file in that yet. And one of the things about GitHub is it doesn't actually upload or show things if there's no file. So this one jumps me directly into 6425, which is the milestone for this last build. But there will be another path here, the head of the milestone subdirectory, where, hey, maybe I'm working on a patch. I want to create a patch for something, fix an issue before we've actually planned it into a sprint. Where do I put that? Well, there'll be a spot here for that. I need to initialize the directory apparently. And we can see here that we have really two folders, builds and patches. And so let's click in builds and see what builds are. We can see our builds. We have 4 core template builds we're tracking right now. There'll probably be more over time, but these are the core 4. And in Milestone 6425, I know the next version is baseline 0.6, cluster ready is 0.5, and SXT ready is 0.4. At some point, we'll probably escalate those to like 1.0, so the versioning will align. But at the end of the day, we can't keep the versioning numbers aligned on these because you're inevitably going to run into some bug or some feature that's just only relevant to cluster ready, and it isn't relevant to baseline or something, and you're going to have to version them independently. So we are versioning them independently, and so our builds in here are really how we take all the different patches and put them together, right? Because the build, understanding how a build was applied is sometimes the order in how you apply the patches is very significant. And I think like I have to remember, like in this last one of the patches, I put it intentionally at the very beginning in baseline, I think, and very intentionally as a last step I did in cluster ready. I think it was like a routing related issue, and in cluster ready, since the cluster is already there, I wanted to do that step at the very last part. And so you come into these build notes, and there's part of the process as well is to open a issue ticket to track whenever you finish all the patches are ready in that process, and you're ready to start the build. Whoever's initiating the build should open a build tracker issue ticket. And so we use that issue ticket number here to organize our directory. And now we can see our baseline 0.6.release notes. And we have some really nice benefits of some of the methodologies, as we can use search strings to search for our labels and have some consistent templates here. So if I want to see the milestone page, and that's not the milestone project board, right? Whenever you create a milestone, it creates a page in GitHub that associates, it just shows the issue tickets that you've associated. So there's kind of tracks if there's different issues that are across different templates. Maybe some issues affect the baseline template, but they don't affect the cluster ready template. Well, we're still planning those into a common sprint, and so this milestone object in GitHub allows us to keep all the different issues that are associated with all the different related activities that are happening during one common sprint together. So we have a milestone page, and we can see our bugs patched. And you can actually look in the search string, and if you see there in the bottom of the page, we're looking at we have a label applies to VApp template baseline 0.5, and a label here that applies to the milestone. So this is going to show me, and this also doesn't say open, right? So this is whether it's open or closed, I should be able to come in here and say what stuff was, we see effects 0.5 in our previous version, and is also associated with milestone 6425, and that allows us to at any point now or in the future come back and see what are the bugs or issue tickets. And this one is just bugs, is not showing new features. So we can also, how we do labeling allows us to, like, we can filter for that one enhancement new feature label, and identify and separate which of these we have defined as new features, which of them are defined as bugs. And then you can see really the main purpose of these build README files is to show the specific order that we went through this process on. And another important part of the build template is the repetitive build processes. So I don't think it made sense to make an issue ticket for the repetitive process, meaning that every time I increment a template, I've got to go in and update a line that says change, how on the desktop of these templates, it says the name of the template, it's 0.5, it's 0.6. Whenever I implement a template, I've got to go change it to where this desktop's going to show 0.5 or 0.6, right? Like you can see we're doing that there. Things like that. I don't want to have to go open issue tickets every single time. So as part of this template, whenever you're creating a release note, you'll use one of these templates, and we'll keep the competitive build processes, repetitive will just be part of that template. And so if you want to see, you can go into the release notes here, and we can go straight into they're linked here to which of the patches, or if we want, we can just go over to see which patches are part of Milestone 6425 here. And we can see just a list of all the patches here. Or if we just click in the patches directory, you can see all the patches. And every issue ticket, before anyone applies the label patches ready, if you've you should have a patch in here, and you should always go into the issue ticket. So if someone's in the Ninja GitHub site and they see an issue there, that's kind of an important point. Like this site is really for people who are a little bit more on the admin side, which could be anybody. But we put this information down in here, and really it's only more of like a power user who's going to need to be going to build stuff in this site. It's when but we wanted to do the issues at the main site because that's where students are going to be, right? And so there's a reason why the issue tickets aren't on the template level subsite. They're here because the student is going to be going through a lab guide, and they're going to have a problem, and they're going to need to come into the issues and see, is that problem possibly related to an issue that I know about? So we use the issue tickets here. But when you close an issue ticket here, if you get to that point where you say patch is ready, you see this one says patch is ready. So I should be able to click in here. And it's one of the things when we get into triage training, we'll go through. But I should not be appending the patches ready label unless I've also prepared that patch documentation and the patch is there. And again, nice thing is maybe I can't get to that new template yet, but I can go ahead and find the patch and other information in this ticket. So that way, if I need to make that change to get through, one of the things like we'll find as I went through, as I just mentioned, I just revalidated this PKS the hard way course, and one of the things I found, for example, is there's PKS the hard way. In general, you can go through an SXT manual installation, SXT configuration, PKS install phase 1 and phase 2, and the template that's available now, let's say if you're going to do that on, say, the baseline 0.5 template, which is probably what most of you may have access to, that template has a bug that affects internet access. So you could come through these lab guides and you may not even realize, oh, everything worked fine. I didn't even realize I didn't have my internet access working right, because we try to pre-save a cache of some of the relevant files that are commonly needed in the base template itself. And so those assets are there. You can always go out and grab updated ones. Then I got to the Harbor tile install lab and realized I did not save Harbor in the base template. And I didn't even create an issue ticket on it because we need to get better at not counting on things to be in the base template, because the OneCloud team is really struggling to keep template versions incrementing and get them transferred out. And so whenever possible, I want to try and keep updates in the form of patches and downloads and things of that nature. And I'm not sure that I'm going to continue to focus on keeping everything in the base template, but in any case, I loaded up Harbor, went to try to go through it, and then I realized I can't, because I'm working on the baseline 0.5 template, and it has this issue number 507 that prevents me from getting internet access from the template. But I went ahead and updated the notes here. It says if you're on one of these two templates, which are you're not going to load cluster ready and then go install Harbor, right? That wouldn't make sense, because the cluster ready template already has Harbor installed. So really the only two templates that you would be doing Harbor tile installation on would be either baseline or SXT ready. So if you're using these, you need to apply this workaround. So I put that note in there, so just to highlight it. And so you can come through here. There's a very simple workaround. In this case, I do have the workaround on a VMware internal site, because there's a password in here that honestly should not be shared very broadly at all. So I'm just going to flip away from that page for cancel, before it shows everybody what that password is. But I will work with anybody directly if you're outside of VMware, if you can't access that. It's a real simple patch. And so again, if we do find issues, and we know it's going to take a while for templates to get patched and transferred, but we can really find good workarounds and organize the workarounds there accordingly. Now, I have been talking more than I should have. I do still have some time for open discussion. Didn't talk so much about futures and vision, but I guess one thing I'll mention real quick is we definitely want to do more automation. We want to do more enhancements. We're starting to do things to help automate, manage some of the assets on the site. Probably one of the biggest ones that we're looking for now in the future is things like right now, if you go to the courses homepage or the lab guides homepage, you can see we have, as you always have in Git, kind of a view of the directory. We have this list of courses here, and then we have the actual courses, and they don't match. And that's because there's an intent that at some point I'll come through and I'll make a Jenkins job or something that'll come through. It'll go into our spreadsheet, pull all the latest list of courses, and then rebuild this page. And so I haven't done that yet. And so what you see down here is oftentimes stale. So if anybody wants to do updates for those, feel free, go right ahead. Otherwise, I'm working on an automation there, or if anybody wants to help work on that automation. If you haven't seen it, right on the courses homepage, this Ninja site data models this is the real, catalog for the course. If anytime anyone wants to create a lab guide, this is where we go to get the URL structure in place and the course number. This is not loading, right? An Edge, of course. There we go. And you can see courses, lab guides, etc. And so you can see there's some blank columns here. Yeah, I know I usually use Chrome. I like Chrome much better, but I don't like that it's giving me this alert that won't go away. Okay, anyways, maybe I have this open over here. Okay, and so if I wanted to create a lab guide, I can just come here, add the title, fill out the things, and so on. But nonetheless, we do have a source of truth for what's in the catalog, and so I can make an API call to this, get the names, from the API call of the data models, run through some IO transformation, and then auto generate that page. So that's a work in progress, and yeah, that's pretty much that. The only other thing I'll say about Vision is we want to try and get the 1.4 sprint and then get a 1.5 sprint to validate 1.5 materials. And I only left about 4 minutes for open discussion here, but let me save that last 4 minutes. So if anyone has anything you want to discuss, sorry for leaving only a couple minutes left here. But let's discuss now. Anything for the group? Okay. So I am guessing that everyone in the group is content. Nothing to bring up. So then I'll take that last minute back then. If anyone that says anything, just shout and interrupt me. But futures and vision, I think we really want to do a lot of cool things with this community. The biggest thing that's happening is we're really trying to get the HOL pod to be able to work with the Ninja-Labs. It can be really huge, right? Anyone, anywhere, anytime, load up their HOL pod and access a Ninja-Lab. So to do that, we had to make some compromises, right? The HOL pods will not ever have full internet access because people use them to go mine Bitcoin and, who knows what else. So we did have to have some restricted internet. So I requested that has access to VMware, so people could go to my VMware. One of the big concerns I have about that is if people want to do something new, how do we get them access to the files to do it with? It's one thing to include licensed software, the base template itself, but people have to download it. So we have for my VMware, for cloud.vmware, so we could potentially include cloud services in there. And then I created an S3 bucket, and I have there's a Harbor registry that's just playing on the internet right now because I had to set it up right at the last. This is a diving catch to try to get this in. So we do have a public internet Harbor registry. It's not even behind a firewall. It's beautiful. that's just sitting here. But the cool thing is that we'll improve this for the next go round. But this is something that should be accessible from the HOL pod when it comes out. And so lab guides that would say, hey, go to Docker Hub and grab this, they would have to be updated to where when someone prepared a lab guide, if you want it to be accessible for an HOL student, you'd have to put the assets that you need them to download either here or in the S3 bucket. The pod should have access to the github.com/VMware and /CNA Tech domains. So if there's a third-party GitHub, we could fork it over to CNA Tech. That should work. But we really do have a little bit more extra overhead for the lab developer. But man, imagine the possibility of being able to share these with anybody, anywhere, and have a growth in the community where somebody from the HOL could jump in and join in and take part and hopefully help us improve and keep the materials up to date. And if we as lab guide developers wanted to create that, we could really just then have a much broader audience even still that we want to share those assets with. And so I'll work on getting the process together. It's still in testing. I'm not 100% sure that it's going to be ready for August. I mean, we tried to put the updates in, but it was a diving catch. But the good thing is if it's not ready for August, it should be ready for Barcelona for VMworld then. So we should be really bringing the HOL world to where anybody could come and participate in this community. So that's the biggest vision thing. And I am out of time. Use my minutes there. If anyone wants to hang out and discuss things, ask questions, I can hang around for a minute. Otherwise, thank you for joining. Really appreciate your time. And please let me know how we should do the future for these calls. I'm just kind of guessing. So make it a community thing.
Thanks, Art.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Art.
Thanks, everyone.